Welcome, Dan Williams, Survive Outdoors. Been under the weather a little bit, so it's been a while, but I'm back. We're going to talk today about Zika and what happened to it. I've had many people ask me, whatever happened to Zika? There's all these conspiracy theories that it never happened. Government made a big deal about it. It's not true at all. So Zika is a single-stranded RNA virus, very similar to West Nile, dengue, yellow fever. All of those are very, very similar. And with viruses, you do get antibodies, just like COVID. The immunity you are going to get from that is going to vary. So before we get into that, let's talk about when it was first identified. It was something like 1947. They identified Zika in monkeys. And then the first immunity that they found in a human was 1967 or 68 in the Polynesian Islands. They had an outbreak of like 19,000 cases of Zika. And then in 2013, I believe, something like that, they had our first U.S. case was in Houston, but the guy was traveling from Latin America back to the U.S. And then in 2016, that is when we have this outbreak in Florida and Texas and the southern states, and then the media grabbed a hold of it. And the main issue was it crossed the placenta, and it affected these children, and the children were born with microcephaly, which is a smaller head. And it was obviously very upsetting for families and very concerning, and there was a panic factor clearly with this, with the Zika virus and the effects on infants. So this picture is going to be of the critter. This is the mosquito, and you see the white dots on the side of it. That is your Aedes aegypti, and that's the mosquito that carries Zika, as opposed to this one, which carries West Nile virus. And we've talked about West Nile. I'll put that video in the discussion below, and as well as at the end of this video on West Nile. And I still see a smattering of West Nile cases. If you like this kind of stuff on wilderness medicine, hey, please subscribe. It would help me out a bunch, and you can follow along to all of our videos. All right, so what are the symptoms of Zika? So the Zika virus from this little six-legged critter are going to be rash, and it's a fine rash, fine little raised papules. You're going to get rash, you're going to get fever, you're going to get muscle aches, joint pain, retrobulbar pain, pain behind the eyes, really painful. It only really 20% of people really are going to get to that point, and I haven't seen any recorded deaths. And for the most part, this really subsides in about 10 to 12 days, and it's not a huge issue. People are not usually admitted because they're not getting severe enough, like, let's say, St. Louis encephalitis, which is a mosquito-borne illness that can affect the brain. So that's important to note. Now, the problem is that this virus, unlike others, is also found heavily in semen, and it will stay in sperm for up to 60 to 90 days. So as someone's traveling to an endemic area of Zika, they are strongly advised to have zero sex for at least 90 days, and so they can just quell those concerns and they won't have to worry about that. The last recorded case of Zika in the USA was in late 2017 in Texas and in Florida. So the antibodies, how long do they last in your body? So that's some important stuff you need to know. So the antibodies for like West Nile is anywhere from 3 to 4 months up to a year. There have been some outlier cases that are longer than a year. With Zika, it's about the same amount of time, 3 months to about a year. Again, some outlier cases. Very similar to COVID. So COVID, you can have antibodies, that's been all over the place since depending on the variant. Some people say 8 months, some people say 4 months, and it's all over the place. We do know that if you get COVID and you're vaccinated, we know that your immunity should last longer. But it also depends on the variant. A colleague of mine had COVID in December. 4 months later, he gets COVID again. So it's all over the place on that. And with Zika, West Nile, all viruses, you definitely have some immunity. So that is why we have why haven't we heard of Zika? Where did it go? Part of the reason is there's so many people down there, they got mosquito bites, they definitely have an immunity. Now, it is predicted, from the guys up above, that eventually this is going to come back with another kind of mini little endemic where people are going to start getting Zika again, and it's just a matter of time, and it's going to depend on when that immunity wears off. Or what will happen is that you're going to have some spattering of cases, and then because of the immunity, it's not a huge issue. We have yet to find out. Nevertheless, it should not be something to prohibit you from going in the outdoors, having a good time, boating, fishing, camping. I almost forgot. One little tidbit on Zika mosquitoes, this little Aedes aegypti. This guy is a daytime biter. Not so much dusk and dawn like West Nile and the majority of mosquitoes. He's a daytime biter. So be aware of that. That's kind of an important little fact. All right, guys, be safe. I hope you enjoyed it. Keep your eyes on the rise and your face to the wind. I'll see you next time. Take care.